Please rise. 34th District Court is now in session. I'm Regina Brooks Green presiding.
Have a seat. Once you sit down, we're social distance, so if you want to unmask, you can. People versus Tyreek Terry for the people.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. Ben Denham at P74280 for the people.
And good afternoon, Judge Blaise Kearney from the Neighborhood Defender Services of Detroit, P83960. On behalf of Mr. Terry, is seated to my right.
And this is set for a preliminary exam today. Are the people ready to proceed?
People are ready.
And it says you're one and only witness. Can you raise your right hand? Solemnly swear or affirm testimony you'll give in this matter will be the truth, so help you God. Go ahead, Mr. Denham.
Thank you, Judge. Good afternoon, sir. What is your name?
Officer Rain,
And for which agency are you an officer?
Romulus.
How long have you been with Romulus PD?
Just under 5 years.
And were you working on February 22nd, 2021?
I was.
Were you working around approximately 5:30 in the afternoon that day?
Yes.
Were you assigned to any sort of specific job or duty at that time?
Patrol.
And what were you wearing?
Fully marked, full uniform, RPD uniform.
Were you in a vehicle, on foot, horse, bicycle, something else?
A Romulus patrol vehicle.
Marked, unmarked? And at approximately 5:30 that day, did you make a traffic stop that brings you to court today?
Yes.
Where did you first see the subject vehicle?
In the area of Branton Elk Creek.
Is that in the city of Romulus,
Yes,
County
sir.
of Wayne?
Yes.
What was going on with this vehicle?
So I was traveling southbound down Branton, two-way street, and I noticed a white SUV. It looked like it came off of a street called Hell Creek, traveling eastbound. And when it went to continue southbound on a Branton, it made a wide turn. And what would have been oncoming traffic if there was any vehicles there. I began to follow it just because of the abrupt turn. As I continued to follow it, the vehicle, I was traveling approximately 25 miles an hour, which is the speed limit of that residential area.
Were you able to tell how fast the white SUV was going at that time?
At that time, I couldn't tell you a specific speed, but it was beginning to pull away from me. I had to speed up a little bit to catch back up to the vehicle. And as it continued southbound, the vehicle continued to pull away from me more.
And were you continuing to go 35 as it's pulling away?
I was, to be honest with you, sir, I know I was starting to travel above 25 miles an hour in just an attempt to catch up with the vehicle, and it was still continuing to pull away. I was at that time probably traveling just above the speed limit, but he was continuing to pull.
Okay. What did you do?
I continued to follow it to a back portion of the neighborhood. It's area of Jessica Lane, Mary Grace. It's a very small part of Oak Brook subdivision. And as I got behind the vehicle down one of the side streets, it continued to create a bigger gap. At that time, I was able to relay the license plate to our dispatch. The dispatch relayed back to me that the owner of the vehicle did not have a valid license. I then activated my license sirens. The vehicle then continued to disregard my license sirens, created more of a gap. I continued to follow.
Okay. Let me just sort of break it up a little and go back in time a second. Why did you turn on your license sirens?
Well, at that time, I knew he was traveling above the speed limit because of the gap that he was creating as I was at first trying to catch up. And then as I was traveling just above the speed limit, he was still creating a gap. Also at that time, my dispatcher had advised me that the owner of the vehicle did not have a license.
Okay.
And I never was able to see the driver of the vehicle. So I, at that time, just assumed it was the owner of the vehicle driving.
All right. What happens after you turn on the license sirens?
The vehicle creates more of a gap. I then have to accelerate with it to keep up for a moment. It travels down the side street. I believe it's Jessica Lane to Mary Grace. Continues briefly northbound Brant just because of the way the neighborhood's set up. It then travels turns onto Brant, continues northbound Brant, and it's starting to create a very large gap in between myself and him. And
Can you tell us how many minutes this went on for?
At that, so the point of the story now, it's probably no more than 15, 20 seconds, maybe 30 seconds at the most.
Okay.
But at this time is when he creates a very large gap, and I'm already doing about 50 miles an hour at this time just to keep up. But he creates such a large gap that we're in a residential area, I start to slow down. I start to back off the vehicle. Just in the case that there's kids, I'm afraid he's gonna crash, I'm gonna crash, somebody's gonna pull out. So I let him continue, I back off. I'm able to keep him in my sights. I see him disregard 2 stop signs at that time down the main road of the neighborhood. And then he ends up going, I believe it is westbound down Colbert, and then, I'm sorry, westbound down Cherry, and then makes a turnaround on Colbert, and then he pulls into an address on Colbert.
And do you recall, or do you know the speed limit on some of these streets?
The entire neighborhood is 25 miles an hour.
Is this a residential neighborhood?
Yes, sir.
What do you do once you see the SUV pull in the driveway, you said?
It's a driveway, yes.
What did you do after you saw that?
I parked the vehicle. As soon as I jumped out of the car, I see a male running towards the rear of the home wearing a blue coat. I immediately advise him to show me his hands. I lose sight of him for a moment. I try to go behind the vehicle to see if the male is still running. And at that time, all I see, there was snow on the ground at the time, all I see is footprints leading to the back door and I believe it's called a wind door or the outside door is swung open or a storm door is swung open and I don't see anybody else, just footprints and the door open.
And were there any other footprints leading from the vehicle?
Not that I can see, sir.
And it's like, can you just describe the snow and the footprints as far as, is it like a foot deep or?
It was a couple inches. I can't recall the exact at that time. I'm sorry.
You were happy to rely on the footprints though?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. What did you do next?
I knocked on the door a couple times, didn't get an answer. At that time, I had a couple other units show up and we just created a perimeter. I then, just based on the crime that we had with the flee and the elude, a couple of my partners searched the vehicle, and then what ended up being the owner's sister, she showed up on scene. We spoke with her for a minute, and then what I believe to be the driver, who eventually told me he was the driver, came out, and then we made an arrest.
Do you see that person in the courtroom?
I do.
Can you please point him out and tell us what he's wearing?
He's wearing a pink button-up with some glasses, and a gray mask.
Judge, may the record reflect the identification of Tyreek Terry?
It's reflected.
Thank you. You said Mr. Terry came out of the house?
Yes.
Okay. Where were you when he exited the door?
I kind of canted to the front door of the home,
Approximately how many feet from the front door would you say?
10, 15 feet.
All right. Did you speak to Mr. Terry when he came out?
I did.
Or did he speak to you first?
I don't recall whether or not he spoke to me first or if I spoke to him first.
Do you recall the first thing you said to him?
Yeah, I asked him if he was the one driving.
Okay. And how far away were you when you asked that?
6, 7 feet at least.
Do you have any partners in the immediate area?
They were closer to me because we observed a male from the outside of the home through there's a big bay window on their home. We observed a male wearing a blue coat, which I had described the male was wearing when he ran to the back of the door of the house. We started to see him approach the front door, and then we kind of backed off a little bit just for safety reasons, and then he exited willingly.
Okay. So he responded to your question, you said, right? Yeah. Prior to that response, did you or any other police officers tell Mr. Terry he's not free to leave or get on the ground or show your hands or anything like that?
Nope.
Okay. And he's still 6, 7 feet away from you when he answers?
Yeah.
Okay.
He was actually very responsive to us. He was being very calm with us.
And did that ever change?
No, not all the way up until the point that we detained him. He was fine.
Okay. What did you do in response to his answer?
Placed him in handcuffs.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I asked him another question. I asked him why he ran.
Okay, so I want to ask you the same things before you ask him, why did you run, did you tell him you're not free to leave or put your hands up?
Objection leading.
Well, it's already been asked and answered, Mr. Dunaway.
Okay, I'll move on, Judge. Did Mr. Terry respond to your second question?
Yes.
What did he say?
He said he was scared and that he had marijuana on him.
Okay.
You know that this exam today has a count of police officer assaulting, resisting, and obstructing. Did, he never did any, he didn't, except for the fleeing,
Correct.
there was no attempt to resist you, or he didn't hit you or push you
No.
or nothing like
No,
that?
he was.
Okay.
Prior to Mr. Terry entering the house, did you say anything to him?
Prior to him entering the home,
Yes.
I believe I just asked him to show me his hands.
And what was his response, verbal, physical, or otherwise? to
He just
that?
continued to run behind the home.
Thank you. No further questions.
Mr. Kearney?
So I'm going to start kind of there at the end. So when you indicated that this vehicle, which was a white Dodge Journey, turned onto Colbert Street, could you describe what that turn was like and what your field of vision was? That occurred?
Yeah, to be honest with you, sir, he was pulling away from me so far at that point, I can't describe that specific turn.
So it'd be fair to say when he made that turn, you didn't see exactly what that turn was like or how he got into the driveway of that home.
I was close enough to where I saw him there's a very short, so when you come from Cherry westbound to go northbound onto Colbert, as soon as you go northbound, almost immediately, there's a turnaround right there. So I was able to catch up by then just to see him make that turnaround, and the house was right there after the turnaround. So he made the turnaround, pulled right into the driveway.
And you did have a dash camera activated for this portion of the.
I had my lights and sirens on, sir. Whether or not the dash cam worked, I cannot speak to that.
So it'd be fair to say that when this turn occurred, and it's a right turn into the driveway, right, once he gets on Colbert Street?
Correct.
Okay. And it'd be fair to say there was a hedgerow or a blockade of the vision there. That once a car pulls into the driveway, if you're past the house, you're not going to be able to see it.
I don't really understand it because it's very open over there. So by the time I made the turnaround, I was able to see the driver exit.
Right. Once you made the turnaround, but
Yeah.
as you're making that U-turn to get onto Colbert Street,
No, everything's wide open right there.
you can see everything there.
From what I can recall, yes, sir.
You could see the driver get out of the car.
I saw a male get out of the driver's side with a blue coat, yes.
Okay. And you're sure of that?
Yeah, that's how I was able to describe it before he, yep,
Describe where your camera's mounted in your vehicle.
in the front.
Okay. In the front, where relative to where the driver's seat is?
I'm in the left side where the driver's seat is, it's in the middle.
Okay, so it's in the dead center. It's literally, this perspective is within inches of where your perspective
I
is.
wouldn't say it, no.
Within a foot?
Couple feet, yeah.
Okay. So it has within a couple of feet the same perspective you do on what's going on.
Yeah, but it doesn't have a swivel like my head does.
Right. So, but as we indicated, you had to drive past this house in order to make the U-turn, correct?
By maybe a couple yards.
Okay. And so it'd be fair to say there was about 6 or 7 seconds in between when you started making the U-turn to when you got out of your car, right?
That's a long time, because the fleet didn't even really last very long. I would say maybe a second or two at the most.
So when you get out of your vehicle, when you step out of your vehicle, where is the man in the vehicle coat?
Exiting the driver's side of the vehicle, sir.
So he's getting out of the driver's side of the vehicle as you're getting the driver's side of your vehicle.
I don't recall the exact time that I exit and when he exits. I just know that as I'm completing the turn, at some point when I'm completing the turn and completing the turnaround, I visually see whether or not it's while I'm behind the vehicle, while I'm stopped, Exactly within those 2 seconds or 3 seconds, I do not recall exactly when I observed the driver get out of the driver's side of the vehicle.
When you got out of your vehicle, where was the driver?
Either running away from me or exiting. I'm assuming running away from me at that point because I can't remember the exact time.
Well, my questions aren't not about assumptions. My question's about what you saw.
Sir, I
Do you
don't
not remember?
I do not recall within those couple seconds whether or not I saw him before or after running.
This is important because this car is parked feet away from the back door, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And if someone gets out of the driver's seat, they take a left and you can't see them anymore from the driveway, correct?
If they run left, I will see them for quite a distance because there's just front yard right there.
I'm talking about backyard. The backyard is where.
Correct. If they go towards the back of the house, I will not
Which
see
is
them.
where the driveway went.
Correct.
And so, as you said, by the time you got up to the backyard, there was no one there. You just saw the storm door.
You are correct.
And you saw footprints coming from that area, correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, at what point in this, when you exit your vehicle, do you say, "Show me your hands"?
I asked him that immediately. As soon as I exit my vehicle, I say, "Show me your
Okay,
hands."
so you're 2 feet, as soon as your 2 feet hit the ground, you're saying, "Show me your hands."
Yes.
Okay.
Within me, whether I'm exiting or my feet are planted, yes.
And you didn't activate your body worn camera for any portion of this incident, right? Sorry, let me rephrase that question. You activated your body worn camera for the first time after this chase had already occurred and the person was inside.
For safety reasons, that sounds correct.
Okay, I didn't ask you why you did it, I asked you if you did it.
I don't recall exactly when I turned my body camera.
You haven't seen any body worn camera footage of you getting out of your vehicle and depicting the man in the blue coat.
No, sir.
In fact, your dash camera doesn't capture a man in a blue coat at all.
It makes sense because I can turn my head and the body cam can't. So.
Now, I want to go to when eventually, you said the sister of the owner of the vehicle comes out of the car, correct? Or comes out of the house?
No. She pulls up. She actually arrives on scene in a separate vehicle.
Okay. And the owner of the vehicle, was that Mr. Terry?
Yes, I find out later. Yes.
Later, okay. Now, how long elapses are between when you guys are outside the home and the sister of Mr. Terry arrives?
Within a few minutes, sir.
Okay. And we say a few minutes, are you talking 15 minutes, 3
I'd say-
minutes?
Just to highball it, sir. I can't remember the exact time. I'd say within 5 to 10.
And in the meantime, how many different patrol units have shown up to this scene?
Wait, from what I recall, I believe there was 3 more.
So are those all with 2 officers apiece or just 1?
1.
Okay, so we're talking about 3 officers total.
Be 4 total, including myself, but yes, 3
4
others.
total, sorry.
Yes.
4 total. And so 4 police cars, 4 officers.
Yes, sir.
And they all sort of parked in various spots around near the front of the home.
Correct.
And I think you said at some point you searched the vehicle prior to Mr. Terry coming out of the house?
Yes.
For what purpose was that again?
Inventory search, sir.
Did you tow the car?
Yes.
Did you inventory the car?
That's why we searched it to inventory. I may have used the incorrect term and I do apologize. It was an inventory search for the tow that we were going to do regardless anybody came out of the home or not.
But the car's parked in the driveway of the home it belongs to, right?
Yes, but we had a crime.
That's not for today's issue, Mr.
Under-
Kearney. For the probable cause, I
No, I-
don't care
I-
whether the car was towed. That's somebody else's issue for a different
I
day.
hear you. So when Mr. Terry comes out of the house, we're talking 4 officers are outside of there, correct?
Correct.
And you said you were not the closest officer to Mr. Terry at that juncture, right?
I did not say that. There was a couple of us outside. I don't know who was the closest in proximity to the front of the door.
Were all 4 of you there in the front yard or was somebody in the backyard as well?
Sir, to be honest with you, at that time, I don't recall.
And were you all dressed like you're dressed today?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and did you have your weapons on you?
Didn't.
And did any of you have your weapons drawn? When Mr. Terry came out of the house, did anyone give him any orders?
Not that I recall.
Like step over here, come here, I want to talk to you.
Not that I can recall, sir.
Now, when you asked the question that he was the driver, did you believe that he was the driver of the vehicle? when he stepped out of the house?
Yes.
And when you asked, after he said yes, you asked him why he ran, that was because you wanted to know why he fled you and committed the crime of fleeing, correct?
Yeah, just more or less to make sure there wasn't no weapons thrown or anything like that. That was more of a safety reason, yes, sir.
All right, I have no further questions.
Anything else?
No redirect, thank you, Judge.
Motion to bind over?
People have no further witnesses.
And you have a motion?
Oh, move to bind over.
Mr. Carney, argument?
Judge, I have no argument. I would submit on the first count. On the second count, I think that I would ask it, I don't think I have to say anymore.
Yeah, I mean, Mr. Dunaway, do you agree to withdraw count two? In the entire incident as police officer fleeing, I mean, I think that there isn't the assaulting.
No, there's definitely not an assault. I think the reason it was charged, and, I mean, we commonly do this, running from the police gets charged as R&O because it's
If
resisting or opposing.
You
I
can stop. I'm not binding over on count two. I'm gonna bind him over on count one only. And then the misdemeanor carries. I'll dismiss count two. The arraignment on the information will take place 2 weeks from today, April the 14th at 9 a.m. and I'll continue the bond.
Thank you.
You know what's happening with these, oh, she left.